When I came home that afternoon, my bedroom was gone. Not the walls, not the windows, just my life. My bed had been dragged into the garage beside dusty paint cans and old bicycles, while my son Ethan stood in the hallway telling me it was only temporary. His wife Lauren smiled as if she'd done me a favor. Then I looked upstairs one last time and noticed the only thing they hadn't touched, a locked closet that had belonged to my late husband Daniel. They thought they'd already taken everything from me. They never opened that closet, and they had no idea that one unopened door was about to change all of our lives. If this story touches your heart, I'd love for you to stay with me until the end. Please like this video if you've ever believed that family should be built on love instead of entitlement. Subscribe if stories about resilience and second chances speak to you. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, what time is it where you're watching from and where in the world are you? I'd also love to know what would have gone through your mind if you came home and found your own bed waiting for you in the garage. My name is Kimberly Taylor, and until that afternoon, I believed the hardest days of my life were already behind me. I was 69 years old, widowed for nearly 18 years, and living in the same house my husband Daniel and I had bought during the spring of 1981. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even the nicest house on our street in Columbus, Ohio. But every wall carried a memory. Every creaky floorboard reminded me of laughter that had once filled those rooms. I thought I would spend the rest of my life there. I never imagined I'd end up sleeping in my own garage. Looking back, I realize it didn't happen overnight. Families rarely fall apart in a single day. They crack a little at a time. It started almost a year earlier. One rainy Tuesday evening, Ethan called me. His voice sounded tired. "Mom, can we talk?" I knew that tone. Something was wrong. He told me he and Lauren were behind on rent. His company had downsized. Lauren's online business wasn't making enough money. Bills were piling up faster than they could pay them. "I hate asking this," he said quietly. "But could we stay with you for a little while?" I didn't hesitate. "Of course." There wasn't even a second thought. He's my son. What kind of mother would say no? 2 weeks later, Ethan, Lauren, and my 10-year-old grandson Noah moved into my home. At first, everything felt wonderful. The house came alive again. Noah's laughter echoed through the hallway every afternoon after school. He loved helping me bake chocolate chip cookies. He'd sit at my kitchen table doing homework while I made dinner. Sometimes he'd look up and say, "Grandma, your mashed potatoes are better than Dad's." I'd laugh every single time. Those little moments made the extra laundry, the crowded kitchen, and the higher grocery bills completely worth it. Even Lauren seemed grateful. She hugged me often. "Kimberly," she'd say, "we'll never forget what you're doing for us." I believed her. Ethan looked happier too. For a little while, it almost felt like we were one big family again. But gratitude has a strange way of disappearing when comfort settles in. After about 3 months, little things started changing. Lauren stopped asking before rearranging furniture. One afternoon, I came home from church and found my favorite reading chair gone from the living room. She had moved it upstairs. "I needed more space for the sectional," she explained with a smile. She didn't ask. She simply informed me. I told myself it wasn't important. It's only a chair. Then came the kitchen. My coffee mugs disappeared. The dishes Daniel and I had collected during road trips across America were packed into boxes. Lauren bought matching white plates because she said they looked cleaner. Again, I stayed quiet. I told myself families compromise. I didn't want conflict, especially not in front of Noah. Ethan rarely noticed. Or maybe he noticed and chose silence. That hurt even more. Whenever Lauren suggested changing something, Ethan simply nodded. "If it makes things easier," he'd say. Those words became his favorite sentence. If it makes things easier. Easier for whom? Certainly not for me. One evening, I reached for my favorite blanket while watching television. It was gone. Lauren had donated it. I thought it looked old. Old. That blanket had wrapped around Daniel during his final weeks in hospice. I smiled anyway. Then I cried after everyone went to bed. I started noticing something else. Lauren no longer called it my house. She called it our house. Our living room. Our kitchen. Our backyard. At first, I assumed it was just a figure of speech, but then she began talking about renovations. We could knock out this wall. We should replace these cabinets. This place has great resale value. Every time she spoke, it felt like she was already planning a future that didn't include me. Ethan never corrected her. Not once. Noah remained the bright spot in every day. He'd sneak into my room before bedtime carrying one of his comic books. Can I read with you? We'd spend 30 minutes laughing over superheroes and silly jokes. Those moments reminded me why I kept swallowing my pride. Children should never feel trapped between adults. If staying quiet protected Noah from tension, then I could handle a few hurt feelings. Or so I thought. Months passed. Lauren gradually occupied more space inside the house. She converted my sewing room into a home office. She emptied hallway closets. She stored my keepsakes in plastic bins without asking. Every time I questioned something, she had the same answer. We're just trying to organize. The word organize became another way of saying erase. Little by little, my home stopped looking like the place Daniel and I had built together. The family photos disappeared from the hallway. Our wedding picture vanished from the fireplace. Daniel's old leather recliner ended up in the basement because it didn't match the decor. I felt like a guest paying every utility bill, a guest paying the property taxes, a guest buying groceries. Still, I said nothing. Margaret Brooks, my best friend for over 40 years, noticed before I admitted it myself. We met every Thursday morning for coffee. One day, she looked at me and frowned. You look exhausted. I'm fine. She shook her head. No, Kimberly. You're surviving. That's different. I laughed it off. She wasn't convinced. You've always put everyone else first. I don't mind. You should. Her words stayed with me long after breakfast ended. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd spent so many years taking care of other people that I'd forgotten how to protect myself. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. I had gone grocery shopping. Nothing unusual, just milk, bread, fresh vegetables, Noah's favorite cereal. I pulled into the driveway, humming along with an old country song on the radio. The garage door was open. At first, I smiled. Then I froze. There, beside dusty storage boxes and an old lawnmower, sat my bed. Perfectly made, my quilt folded neatly across the foot, my nightstand beside it. Even my reading lamp had been plugged into an extension cord. For a moment, I honestly wondered if I had driven to the wrong house. Then Ethan walked toward me. His hands were shoved into his pockets. He wouldn't look me in the eye. Mom, he said quietly, don't be upset. My heart sank before he said another word, because deep inside, I already knew nothing would ever be the same again. I stood in the garage staring at my bed, but my mind wasn't really there. It had traveled backward. Back to a different Ethan. Back to the little boy who once promised he'd always take care of me. People often ask when children change. The truth is, they don't change all at once. Life changes them. People influence them. Sometimes they slowly become strangers while you're still calling them by the same name. When Ethan was 8 years old, Daniel died. Cancer doesn't only take the person lying in the hospital bed. It steals part of everyone left behind. Daniel fought for nearly 2 years. He never complained, not once. Even during chemotherapy, he would smile and tell Ethan, "Buddy, your mom is the strongest woman you'll ever know." I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified. The day after Daniel's funeral, I sat alone in our kitchen staring at unpaid bills. The mortgage, the car payment, medical debt, insurance, college savings. Everything suddenly belonged to me. I remember opening Daniel's old toolbox. Inside was a folded piece of paper. It simply read, "You've always found a way." I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Then I folded that note and put it back. The next morning, I started looking for extra work. During the day, I taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. At night, I cleaned offices downtown. On weekends, I tutored children whose parents could afford private lessons. Some nights I slept 4 hours, sometimes less. But Ethan never knew. I made sure of that. If we had pancakes for dinner because groceries were tight, I'd call it breakfast night. He loved it. If I couldn't afford expensive Christmas gifts, I'd make scavenger hunts around the house. He thought they were better than toys. Children don't measure love by money. Adults often forget that. One winter, the furnace broke. The repair estimate was nearly $3,000. I couldn't pay it, so I sold my mother's wedding ring. I never told Ethan. That ring had been in my family for generations. But keeping my son warm mattered more than keeping jewelry in a drawer. When Ethan graduated from high school, he hugged me longer than he ever had before. He whispered, "Mom, everything I become is because of you." I believed him. At his college graduation, he searched the crowd until he found me. Then he pointed toward me before accepting his diploma. His friends later told me he couldn't stop talking about me. "My mom sacrificed everything." Hearing those words made every sleepless night worth it. When Ethan got his first real job, he took me out to dinner. Nothing fancy, just a small Italian restaurant. Halfway through the meal, he slid an envelope across the table. Inside was $500. "I know it isn't much." I looked at him. "What is this?" "A small payment." "For what?" "For everything." I pushed the money back. "No." He frowned. "You deserve it." "I already got paid." "How? You grew into a good man?" I honestly believed my hardest work as a mother was finished. Then one Thanksgiving, Ethan brought someone home. "Mom," he said with a grin, "I want you to meet Lauren." She was beautiful, confident, well-dressed. She walked into my home carrying homemade pumpkin pie. She hugged me before I could even introduce myself. "So, you're the famous Kimberly?" I laughed. "Famous? Ethan says you're basically Wonder Woman." I liked her immediately. She was polite, funny. She complimented my cooking. She insisted on helping wash dishes. When they announced their engagement a year later, I cried happy tears. Daniel wasn't there to see it, but I knew he would have been proud. Their wedding was beautiful. Lauren looked radiant. Ethan couldn't stop smiling. During the father-daughter dance, Lauren danced with her own father. Then, she surprised everyone. She walked over and invited me onto the dance floor. "You raised the man I love," she whispered. "You deserve this dance too." I thought I'd gained a daughter. Maybe that's why I ignored the little warning signs afterward. They were so small, almost invisible. Lauren handled every financial decision. If I asked Ethan about saving money, he'd glance toward her before answering. When they bought a new SUV, Lauren negotiated everything. Ethan barely spoke. I assumed they simply divided responsibilities. Every marriage is different. Still, sometimes I'd ask Ethan a simple question. "How's work going?" He'd start answering. Lauren would interrupt. He doesn't need to worry about that anymore. Or, we've already talked about it. Or, I've got everything under control. I noticed Ethan talking less each year. Not only around me, around everyone. At family gatherings, Lauren became the voice. Ethan became the audience. Margaret noticed it too. One afternoon, she asked, "Does Ethan ever make decisions anymore?" I defended him. "He's just easygoing." She raised an eyebrow. "There's a difference between peaceful and passive." I didn't want to believe her. Then came another moment I should have paid attention to. It happened during Daniel's birthday. Every year I baked his favorite pecan pie. Not because anyone expected me to, because it helped me remember him. That evening, Ethan came by. He hugged me. Lauren looked around the dining room. "So, are we really doing this every year?" I smiled politely. "It keeps his memory alive." She shrugged. "I just think dwelling on the past keeps people from moving forward." Her words landed harder than she realized. Daniel wasn't my past. He was part of every reason I had survived. Ethan stayed quiet. Again. Silence. Always silence. Months later, they bought a larger television, then expensive patio furniture, then a luxury vacation. I quietly wondered how they afforded everything, especially when Ethan mentioned money was tight. Lauren always had an explanation. "We deserve to enjoy life." Maybe they did. It wasn't my place to judge. But something didn't add up. The spending increased. The savings never seemed to. Every time I offered advice, Lauren smiled politely. "We've got it handled." Looking back now, I realize Ethan slowly stopped making eye contact whenever money came up, almost as if he already knew things weren't as stable as they appeared. Then one evening, about 6 months before they moved into my house, Ethan visited alone. That was unusual. Lauren almost always came with him. He sat at my kitchen table, quietly stirring his coffee. He looked exhausted, older. There were dark circles beneath his eyes. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." I knew immediately he was lying. "You can tell me." He forced a smile. "Everything's fine. We talked about Noah's baseball team, about work, about the weather. Nothing important." As he stood to leave, he hugged me. Longer than usual. Then he said something I didn't fully understand until much later. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I thought he meant emotionally. Now I realize. Maybe he meant financially. Maybe the cracks had already started spreading beneath their marriage. Maybe he already knew they were sinking. Maybe he wanted to tell me. But he never did. Instead, he came home months later, not as my grown son coming to visit, but as a man carrying problems far bigger than I ever imagined. And I opened my front door without asking a single question, because that's what mothers do. Sometimes, they love first and discover the truth much later. I looked from my bed in the garage to Ethan's face. He still couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom," he repeated, "please don't make this harder than it has to be." Harder. I almost laughed. The only thing keeping me from falling apart was the grocery bag still hanging from my arm. Lauren stepped into the garage with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We wanted to surprise you." I stared at her. "A surprise?" "Yes," she said cheerfully. "Now, you won't have to climb the stairs anymore. It's much safer at your age." At my age, people can hide insults inside concern. They're still insults. I slowly put the grocery bags on a folding table. I've been climbing those stairs for 25 years. Lauren folded her arms. And now, you don't have to. She spoke as though the conversation was already over. I turned toward Ethan. You agreed to this? He rubbed the back of his neck. We just thought. No. I interrupted him. I asked if you agreed. His silence answered before his words did. Yes. That single word hurt more than seeing my bed beside a lawnmower. I walked past both of them and climbed the stairs. No one stopped me. My bedroom door was open. The room echoed. Every dresser drawer had been emptied. The bookshelf Daniel built for me was gone. My rocking chair was gone. Even the curtains had been replaced. Only one thing remained. The old wooden closet Daniel had installed decades earlier. It stood against the wall exactly as he had left it. Locked. Untouched. Lauren must have thought it was just another storage space. I placed my hand against the worn oak door. For just a moment, everything else disappeared. I could almost hear Daniel laughing as he measured the wood himself. He had refused to buy a prefabricated closet. I'm building one that'll outlive both of us, he joked. Turns out, he was right. Kimberly. Lauren's voice pulled me back. She was standing in the doorway. We're planning to turn this room into Noah's bedroom. I slowly turned around. My bedroom. He needs more space. There are 3 other bedrooms. This one gets the best sunlight. I looked at Ethan again. Still nothing. Still silence. I nodded once. I see. That was all I said. Sometimes silence carries more disappointment than anger ever could. Lauren seemed relieved. I knew you'd understand. No, she simply mistook self-control for agreement. I walked downstairs without another word. That evening, I ate dinner alone in the garage. No one invited me to the dining table, not because they forgot. Because my place setting wasn't there anymore. From the garage, I could hear Noah laughing upstairs. I didn't blame him. He was only 10. Children accept whatever adults present as normal. The adults were the problem. Later that night, Noah quietly opened the garage door. He carried a plate wrapped in aluminum foil. Grandma? I smiled. What are you doing awake? He walked over. I saved you some lasagna. I looked at the plate, then back at him. Thank you, sweetheart. He frowned. Are you really sleeping here? For now. He looked around the garage. It's cold. I'll be okay. He hesitated. Dad said it's temporary. I forced another smile. I know. He hugged me. Children can sense sadness even when they don't understand it. After he went upstairs, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling. The garage smelled like gasoline and old cardboard. Every few minutes, the water heater clicked on. I barely slept. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Old habits. I made coffee. As I carried my mug toward the kitchen, I stopped. Lauren had redecorated it too. Different curtains, different canisters, different rugs. Even my favorite coffee cups were gone. I opened one cabinet. White mugs. Another cabinet. White bowls. Everything looked like a furniture showroom. Nothing looked like my home. Lauren entered wearing workout clothes. Oh, you're up early. I always am. She opened the refrigerator. We're trying to keep healthier food in the house. I noticed my homemade peach jam had disappeared. So I see. She didn't notice my tone, or maybe she didn't care. Over the next several weeks, the changes continued. Family photographs disappeared one by one. Daniel's navy portrait vanished from the hallway. The framed picture of Ethan catching his first fish disappeared from the living room. The quilt my grandmother made rested inside a plastic storage bin. Every memory was quietly being packed away. One afternoon, I came home from visiting Margaret. I found Lauren standing on a ladder. She was taking down the last family portrait near the staircase. It was my favorite. Daniel stood in the middle. Ethan was 12. We were all smiling. "What are you doing?" I asked. "It doesn't match." The color scheme." I walked closer. "That's my family." She shrugged. "I'll put it in storage." Storage. Everything precious eventually ended up in storage. That evening, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to hear. Lauren and Ethan were sitting in the living room after Noah had gone to bed. I was walking down the hallway when Lauren spoke. "If we renovate the upstairs, the value could increase by at least 100,000. Ethan answered quietly. "Maybe. We have to think long term." "I know. This house is our biggest opportunity. Again." I stood perfectly still. Lauren continued. "Once everything is updated, it'll practically sell itself." Sell? My heartbeat quickened. Were they talking about my house? I leaned closer. Ethan lowered his voice. "We can't talk about that yet." "Why not? Mom's still here." Lauren laughed softly. "She won't live here forever." Those 6 words pierced deeper than any knife. She won't live here forever. Of course she was right. None of us live forever. But hearing someone quietly plan for your absence while you're still alive? That's a different kind of pain. I walked back toward the garage before they noticed me. I couldn't bear hearing another word. The next morning, Margaret called. "You sound tired." "I am." "What happened?" For the first time, I told someone everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was silent for several seconds. Finally, she asked one question. "Whose name is on the deed?" I blinked. "I honestly don't know." "You don't know?" "Daniel handled most of the paperwork." "Kimberly," her voice became serious, "you need to find out." "I trust Ethan." "I'm not asking about trust." "Then what?" "I'm asking about facts." Facts. That word stayed with me all day. Because feelings can be manipulated. Facts cannot. That evening, I walked upstairs after everyone had gone to bed. The hallway was dark. I stopped in front of Daniel's old closet. I rested my hand against the lock. Behind that door were things I hadn't touched in nearly 2 decades. Letters, memories, boxes, and documents Daniel once told me never to throw away. At the time, I thought he was simply being sentimental, standing there in the darkness. For the first time, I began to wonder if he had left behind much more than memories. Maybe the only thing in this house that hadn't been moved was also the only thing capable of changing everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. The garage was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept thinking about Daniel's closet. For 18 years, I had avoided opening it. Not because I was afraid of what was inside. Because I wasn't ready. Grief has strange habits. Sometimes you preserve memories by refusing to disturb them. That closet became my way of keeping Daniel close. The next morning, after everyone left the house, I walked upstairs. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I unlocked the door. The old brass key slid into the lock as smoothly as if it had been used yesterday. When I turned it, the familiar click echoed through the empty bedroom. I took a deep breath. Then I opened the door. The scent hit me first. Old cedar, paper, leather. A faint trace of Daniel's aftershave that somehow still lingered after all these years. My eyes filled with tears. It felt as though time had stopped inside that tiny room. Nothing had moved. Nothing had aged. Shelves lined both walls. Every box was labeled in Daniel's neat handwriting. Family letters, military records, taxes, home documents, insurance, keepsakes. Even after all those years, he was still organized. That was Daniel. He believed everything important deserved a place. I smiled through my tears. "You still take care of us," I whispered. I stepped inside and gently ran my fingers across the first box. Family letters. I opened it. Inside were dozens of envelopes tied together with blue ribbon. Some were from our dating years. Others were birthday cards, anniversary notes, letters Daniel had written while traveling for work. I unfolded one at random. The date read, April 17th, 1984. It began, "Kimberly, if you're reading this, I probably forgot to tell you this morning how much I love you." I couldn't read another word. My vision blurred. I carefully folded it again. Some memories are too precious to rush through. On the shelf beneath it sat another box. Military records. Daniel had served in the Navy before we married. Inside were medals, certificates, photographs of young sailors smiling beneath impossibly blue skies. I picked up one photograph. Daniel couldn't have been older than 23. He looked so young, so hopeful. Noah had his smile. I made a mental note to show him someday. Children deserve to know where they come from. Further back sat several thick binders. Property records, insurance files, tax returns dating back decades. Daniel had saved everything. Typical. He used to joke, "Paperwork solves arguments before they happen." At the time, I thought he was overly cautious. Now, his words sounded different. I reached toward the bottom shelf. A large wooden box rested there. Inside were things no amount of money could replace. Noah's first baby shoes, Ethan's kindergarten drawings, a dried flower from our 25th anniversary, movie tickets from our first date, hospital bracelets from Ethan's birth. I laughed softly. Daniel had kept everything. He believed ordinary moments eventually became priceless memories. Maybe he was right. As I continued organizing, something unusual caught my attention. Behind several photo albums sat a slim black binder. I didn't remember seeing it before. It wasn't dusty. It looked newer than everything else. I pulled it forward. Across the front in Daniel's handwriting were 4 simple words. "Open only if necessary." My heartbeat quickened. Necessary. What had he meant? For a moment, I considered opening it. Instead, I placed it on a nearby shelf. Not yet. I wanted to finish looking through the room first. I found more treasures than I expected. Old home videos, receipts from family vacations, Daniel's handwritten journals, even Ethan's Little League trophies that somehow had disappeared years ago. Every item told part of our family story. That's when I realized something. Lauren would have looked at this room and seen clutter. I saw an entire lifetime. People who chase money rarely understand the value of memories. As I carefully closed another box, I heard footsteps downstairs. I froze. Someone was home. I quietly closed the closet door, but left it unlocked. A few seconds later, Lauren called from downstairs. "Kimberly." "I'm upstairs." She walked into the bedroom carrying shopping bags. She stopped when she saw me standing near the closet. "Oh." Her eyes immediately drifted toward the open door. "I didn't know you still had the key." "I've always had it." She smiled politely. "I've been wondering what's in there." "Old memories." She stepped closer. "Mind if I look?" "No." The answer came faster than I expected. She blinked. "I was just curious." "So was I." She laughed awkwardly. "I figured it was mostly junk. I looked directly at her. Nothing in that closet is junk. For the first time since she'd moved in, Lauren seemed uncomfortable. She quickly changed the subject. I've been thinking. About what? Since Noah's moving into this room, maybe we should clear out the closet too. There it was. The real reason. Not curiosity. Space. Everything was about space, about remodeling, about replacing. I'll take care of it, I replied. She nodded slowly. As long as it's done before we paint. Paint. You've already picked paint. We're thinking light gray. I looked around the bedroom. She was speaking as though the room already belonged to her. Again, without asking, without waiting. She turned to leave. Then she stopped. Oh, by the way, Ethan and I are meeting with a contractor next week. A contractor? We want estimates. For what? The upstairs. My stomach tightened. She smiled again. It'll increase the home's value. Home value. Those two words appeared more often than family lately. After she left, I closed the closet door again. This time, I locked it. Then I picked up the black binder. Open only if necessary. I stared at those words for nearly a minute. Finally, I opened it. Inside wasn't what I expected. No photographs, no letters, no keepsakes, only neatly organized folders. Each one had typed labels. Property, trust, attorney, emergency instructions. My pulse quickened. Daniel had never mentioned any of this. I opened the first folder. The pages were filled with legal language, trust agreements, signatures, witnesses, dates. I recognized Daniel's signature immediately. The rest meant very little to me. Legal documents had never been my strength. I carefully flipped through several pages. Certain words stood out. Trustee, beneficiary, residency, successor, conditions. Conditions. Why would Daniel place conditions on anything I wanted to keep reading? Then I heard another sound downstairs. A man's voice. Ethan. He had come home early. I quickly returned every document exactly where I found it. I closed the binder, locked the closet, and slipped the key into my sweater pocket. As I walked downstairs, Ethan looked up from the kitchen table. Mom? You're home early. Meeting got canceled. He studied my face for a moment. You okay? I was just cleaning. He smiled. That's good. Then he glanced toward the staircase. Lauren said you were in the old closet. Yes. What all's in there? I looked directly into his eyes. Things your father wanted protected. He nodded. I guess someday I'll have to go through it. I forced a small smile. Maybe. But deep inside, something told me that someday was coming much sooner than either of us expected. And whatever Daniel had hidden inside those folders, it was important enough that he never wanted it forgotten. After finding the black binder, I stopped believing in coincidences. Daniel had planned something. I didn't know what, but I knew enough not to ignore it. From that day forward, I watched the house differently. Not as a mother, as someone trying to understand a puzzle her husband had left behind. Lauren, meanwhile, grew more impatient. The renovation was no longer just an idea. It became a daily conversation. We should replace the flooring. The walls need to come down. Noah deserves a bigger closet. Every sentence sounded harmless by itself. Together, they sounded like a demolition plan. One Saturday morning, I came upstairs carrying clean towels. Lauren was standing in the hallway with two men wearing polo shirts and carrying measuring tapes. She smiled brightly. Kimberly, these are the contractors. Contractors. So she hadn't been joking. One of the men extended his hand. "Morning, ma'am." I shook it politely. Lauren pointed toward my old bedroom. "That's the room." They walked inside without asking permission. One measured the walls. The other took notes. I stood quietly in the hallway. It felt strange watching strangers calculate the future of a room that had belonged to me for almost half my life. Then one contractor stopped in front of Daniel's closet. "What's behind this?" Lauren answered before I could. "Storage." He tried the handle. Locked. "We'll probably need this opened before construction." Lauren looked toward Ethan. "Can you find the key?" Ethan shrugged. "I've never had it." She looked at me. "Kimberly, I'll take care of it. When I'm ready." The contractor smiled politely. "We'll need access before we can finalize the plans." Plans? Everyone had plans, except me. After they left, Lauren sighed dramatically. "I don't understand why you're making this difficult." I looked at her calmly. "It's one closet." "Exactly. So why are you in such a hurry?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked away. That silence told me more than words ever could. The closet wasn't important because of its size. It was important because she couldn't control it. That afternoon, I went back upstairs. This time I carried an empty canvas tote bag. I unlocked the closet, closed the bedroom door behind me. Then I opened the black binder again. I read more carefully. Most of the legal language still confused me, but one folder immediately caught my attention. It was labeled Personal Instructions. Inside lay a sealed, cream-colored envelope. Across the front in Daniel's handwriting were 6 words. "For Kimberly, if necessary." My heart pounded. This wasn't addressed to an attorney, not to Ethan, to me. I carefully held the envelope in both hands. Should I open it or should I wait? I remembered something Daniel once told me years before. "If I ever leave you instructions, trust that I had a reason." That settled it. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Daniel's handwriting instantly brought tears to my eyes. The first sentence made me stop breathing. "If you're reading this, something has gone wrong inside our family." I sat down on the floor. He couldn't possibly have known. Could he? I kept reading. "I hope I'm wrong. But if I'm right, don't panic. Everything you'll need has already been prepared." Prepared? Prepared for what? The next page mentioned William Carter, our attorney. Daniel instructed me to contact him before showing anyone the contents of the binder. He underlined one sentence. "Do not let anyone pressure you into making decisions before speaking with William." Pressure. That word suddenly carried enormous weight. I read the rest twice, then a third time. Daniel never explained exactly why he expected problems, but somehow, he expected them. At the bottom of the envelope sat another folded document. Unlike the handwritten letter, this one was notarized. I didn't understand everything it contained, but I recognized enough to know it was important. Extremely important. Without wasting another minute, I placed both papers inside my canvas bag. Everything else stayed exactly where it had been. I carefully relocked the closet. No one would notice anything missing. At least, that was my hope. The following Monday, I noticed another change. Lauren had ordered paint samples, dozens of them. They covered the dining room table. Gray, white, beige, soft blue. No one had asked my opinion. No one had asked whether I even wanted the walls painted. At lunch, Lauren spread renovation magazines across the kitchen counter. She pointed toward one photograph. "This is exactly what I want." Open shelves, modern lighting, minimal decoration. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked cold. I quietly made myself a sandwich. She continued talking. We could even remove that old closet? My hand froze halfway to my mouth. The closet? It wastes space. I forced myself to stay calm. It's built into the wall. The contractor said almost anything can be removed. Almost anything. She smiled proudly. This house has so much potential. I looked around the kitchen. Family photographs were gone. Daniel's favorite clock had disappeared. The old recipe box my mother gave me sat hidden in a cabinet. Potential. Apparently, memories had become obstacles. That evening, I received another surprise. Noah wandered into the garage carrying his backpack. Grandma. Hi, sweetheart. He sat beside me on the bed. Mom says my new room is going to be awesome. I'm sure it will be. He smiled. They're putting shelves where your old closet is. My stomach tightened. Shelves? Yeah. Dad said they're tearing it out. I felt every muscle in my body stiffen. They said that. He nodded innocently. They said nobody uses it anyway. Nobody, except the woman whose entire marriage still lived behind that door. I hugged Noah. He had no idea what he'd just told me. Children simply repeat what they hear. Adults reveal themselves without realizing it. That night, I barely slept. By sunrise, I had made my decision. Waiting was no longer an option. If the closet was about to disappear, anything important inside had to disappear first. I waited until everyone left. Lauren went shopping. Ethan went to work. Noah went to school. I climbed the stairs with my canvas bag one final time. Inside the closet, I moved carefully. I removed only one thing: the sealed envelope from Daniel. Nothing else. Every box remained exactly where it belonged. The shelves looked untouched. If someone searched casually, they would never know anything had changed. I tucked the envelope inside the lining of my old handbag. Not in a drawer, not in the garage. Somewhere no one would think to look. As I zipped the bag shut, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Too early. I hurried downstairs. Lauren walked through the front door carrying shopping bags. She smiled strangely. Perfect timing. For what? I've got good news. What is it? The contractor found someone who can open locked doors without damaging them. She looked directly at me. So we won't need your key after all. For the first time since Ethan moved back home, I realized we were no longer arguing over a closet. We were racing towards something much bigger. And somehow, Daniel had seen it coming years before any of us did. The morning after Lauren announced she had found someone to open Daniel's closet, I stopped pretending everything would somehow work itself out. For months, I had hoped kindness would soften hearts. Instead, my silence had been mistaken for surrender. Daniel's letter sat safely inside my handbag. I read it again before leaving the house. One sentence stood out more than the others. William Carter will know exactly what to do. That was enough for me. I called his office from my car. The receptionist answered. Carter and Associates. My name is Kimberly Taylor. There was a brief pause. Mrs. Taylor. Yes. Mr. Carter has asked us to schedule you immediately if you ever called. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. Immediately. Yes, ma'am. He has an opening this afternoon. I looked at the clock. 3 hours. I'll be there. The drive across Columbus felt much longer than usual. William Carter's office hadn't changed in years. Same brick building, same polished wooden doors, same brass nameplate. The waiting room smelled like coffee and old books. A young assistant greeted me. Mrs. Taylor, he's expecting you. expecting me. That phrase unsettled me. William Carter stood as I entered his office. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was completely white now, but his handshake remained firm. Kimberly, it's been a long time. Too long. He gestured toward a chair. I've been wondering when I'd see you. That surprised me. You knew I'd come. He smiled sadly. I hoped you never would. He already knew. Without saying another word, I removed Daniel's envelope from my handbag and placed it on his desk. William looked at it for several seconds before touching it. Then he nodded. So, it happened. I stared at him. What happened? The situation Daniel worried about. A chill ran through me. He actually expected this. William leaned back in his chair. Daniel never claimed he could predict the future. Then why? He understood people. I remained silent. William folded his hands together. A few months before Daniel passed away, he asked me one question. What question? Can love make good people do foolish things? I frowned. What did you answer? I told him yes. William sighed. He said something I'll never forget. He opened a file cabinet and removed a thick folder with Daniel's name on it. He told me, if Kimberly is ever forced to choose between protecting our family and protecting herself, she'll choose the family every time. Tears filled my eyes. That sounds like him. It also worried him. William opened the folder. Inside were dozens of documents, much more than I expected. You've seen the binder? Yes. But you haven't read everything? No. He nodded, probably for the best. He slowly removed one document. I'd like to explain something before you continue reading. I listened carefully. When Daniel purchased your home, he later transferred ownership into something called the Taylor Family Trust. I blinked. The trust? Yes. I thought the house was ours. It was. But legally, the trust became the owner. I tried to understand. So, what does that mean? It means the property follows the trust's instructions instead of assumptions. Assumptions! Like Ethan believing the house would automatically become his. William continued. Daniel worried that after he died, you might become vulnerable. I've managed. You've survived. He smiled kindly. Those aren't always the same thing. I lowered my eyes. He wasn't wrong. William continued reviewing the documents. The trust gives you complete lifetime residency rights, so no one can force me out. No? He answered without hesitation. No one. I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in weeks. William looked directly at me. Has someone tried? I hesitated. Then I told him everything. The garage, the renovations, the missing photographs, Lauren, the contractors, the plan to remove Daniel's closet. I didn't exaggerate. I simply told the truth. William never interrupted. When I finished, he removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead. I'm sorry, Kimberly. I keep wondering where I failed. You didn't. I raised Ethan. You also loved him. His words echoed through the room. Sometimes love isn't enough to protect someone from making terrible decisions. William opened another folder. This document is extremely important. He slid it toward me. I noticed Daniel's signature. Mine wasn't there. This remained sealed because Daniel hoped you'd never need it. What is it? I'll explain everything later. Later. Not today. I looked confused. Why? Because before we discuss legal strategy? He paused. I need to know something. What? Do you want justice? The question surprised me. I don't understand. He leaned forward. There are many ways this can end. I only want my family back. William smiled sadly. I expected that answer. But justice and reconciliation aren't always the same thing. I looked out the office window. I don't want to destroy Ethan. You won't. I just want him to remember who he used to be. William nodded slowly. Then don't confront him yet. I looked back. You think I should wait? I know you should. Why? Because they haven't shown all their intentions yet. What does that mean? If Lauren is already hiring contractors, he closed the folder. They're going to make another move. His certainty unsettled me. You sound sure. I've practiced estate law for 40 years. He smiled gently. Greed rarely stops halfway. That sentence stayed with me. Greed rarely stops halfway. Before I left, William handed me a business card. Keep this with you. I will. If anything changes, I'll call. No. He looked directly into my eyes. You'll call immediately. I nodded. On the drive home, I kept replaying our conversation. Lifetime residency rights, Taylor Family Trust, Daniel's preparations. Everything suddenly felt different. For weeks, I'd believed I was powerless. Now, I knew I wasn't. But knowing I had legal protection didn't erase the heartbreak. I'd never wanted to stand against my own son. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Ethan's truck already parked outside. He was home early again. Inside the house, voices echoed from the dining room. Lauren, Ethan, someone else. I quietly stepped inside. We should move quickly. It was a man's voice, one of the contractors. Lauren answered confidently. If we start upstairs first, everything else can wait. What about the closet? No problem. She laughed. We'll have it open this week. This week. I closed my eyes. William had been right. They weren't slowing down. They were speeding up. I quietly backed toward the garage before anyone noticed I had returned. Inside my handbag rested Daniel's letter. Inside my pocket rested William's business card. For the first time since my bed had been moved into the garage, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was preparing. Because whatever happened next, I finally knew I wouldn't be facing it alone. After meeting with William Carter, I stopped reacting. I started observing. That surprised Lauren. She expected tears, arguments, begging. Instead, I smiled more than ever. Nothing unsettles manipulative people quite like calm. 3 days later, I was watering flowers in the backyard when Noah came running toward me. He still wore his baseball uniform. His cheeks were bright red from practice. Grandma! I smiled. How'd the game go? I got a double. I knew you would. He grinned proudly before lowering his voice. Can I tell you a secret? I looked around dramatically. I've always been good at keeping secrets. He leaned closer. Mom and Dad are really excited. About what? They're looking at beach houses. I blinked. Beach houses? He nodded enthusiastically. In Florida. I forced a smile. That sounds nice. Dad says after we sell this house, we'll have enough money. The watering can slipped slightly in my hand. I caught it before it hit the ground. After... what? He answered without hesitation. After we sell your house. Children never realize when they're revealing adult conversations. They simply repeat what they've heard. Noah smiled innocently. I want a house with a swimming pool. I hugged him tightly. I hope you always dream big. He ran back inside. I remained standing in the garden. William had been right. They weren't discussing possibilities anymore. They were planning a future built on money they didn't own. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about Noah's words. Beach houses, swimming pools, selling my home. Someone was already spending imaginary money. The following afternoon, I overheard another conversation. Lauren was sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop open. Real estate websites covered the screen. Ethan sat beside her. She pointed toward one listing. This one has 4 bedrooms. It's expensive. Not after the sale. Ethan hesitated. We still don't know exactly, Lauren interrupted. The house is worth at least $800,000. He nodded slowly. Probably. We'll have plenty. Plenty. I quietly backed away before they noticed me. That single word echoed through my mind. Plenty. People often become careless when they believe victory is already guaranteed. Lauren certainly had. Over the next week, she became more confident, almost cheerful. Packages arrived nearly every day. New curtains, lighting catalogs, kitchen samples, flooring brochures. She had transformed my dining room into a renovation office. One afternoon, she spread blueprints across the table. Noah accidentally spilled orange juice on one corner. Lauren snapped. Noah! The little boy froze. I'm sorry. You have to be more careful. His eyes filled with tears. I immediately grabbed a towel. It's only paper. Lauren sighed dramatically. It cost money. I knelt beside Noah. It's okay, he whispered. I didn't mean to. I know. He hugged me tightly. That evening, after Noah went upstairs, I found him sitting quietly on his bed. Usually he filled the room with stories. That night, he barely spoke. You okay? He shrugged. I don't like it when Mom gets mad. Neither did I. I sat beside him. Everyone gets frustrated sometimes. He looked down at the floor. They fight a lot now. My heart sank. They do? He nodded. I hear them. What do they argue about? He whispered so quietly, I almost missed it. Money. There it was again. Always money. Children notice much more than adults realize. The next Thursday, I met Margaret for breakfast. She immediately noticed my expression. You learned something. I did. What? They're already planning to sell my house. Margaret set down her coffee cup. They actually said that Noah did. She leaned back. Children don't invent conversations like that. No. We sat quietly for a moment. Then she asked, What are you going to do? I smiled faintly. Exactly what William told me. Wait. Margaret shook her head. I don't know how you're staying so calm. I don't either. The truth was, I wasn't calm. I simply refused to let them see my fear. Fear gives dishonest people confidence. I wasn't going to give them either. That weekend, Ethan surprised me. He knocked softly on the garage door. Mom! I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. Come in. He sat on an old folding chair. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he cleared his throat. How are you doing? I almost laughed. How was I doing sleeping beside gardening tools, living in a garage, watching strangers redesign my home? I'm fine. He nodded. I'm glad. Another silence. Then he looked around the garage. We'll make this nicer. I looked directly at him. The garage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You think I'm staying here permanently? His expression changed. No? You just said, I meant until... He never finished, because he didn't know how, or maybe because he finally realized how cruel his words sounded. He stood up awkwardly. I should go. Ethan. He turned. When was the last time you slept in a garage? His shoulders dropped. I raised you in this house. I know. I gave you my bedroom. I know. So tell me honestly. My voice remained calm. When did this start feeling normal to you? He couldn't answer. Instead, he walked away. Watching him leave hurt more than any argument ever could. Because deep inside, I knew the little boy who once promised to protect me would have never walked away like that. Something had changed him, or someone had. The next Monday morning, another unexpected visitor arrived. A delivery truck. The driver unloaded stacks of hardwood flooring onto my driveway. Lauren signed for everything. I watched from the kitchen window. The driver asked, "Where do you want it?" She answered confidently. Upstairs. The renovation had officially begun, without permits, without final plans, without asking the homeowner. Lauren walked back inside, smiling. "We're finally making progress." I simply nodded. She studied my face carefully. "Aren't you excited?" "For what?" "The future." I looked at her for several seconds before answering. "I've learned that the future belongs to whoever is patient enough to wait for it." She smiled politely. But I noticed something. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Maybe because I wasn't reacting the way she expected. Maybe because calm frightened her more than anger. Or maybe some small part of her had begun wondering whether I knew something she didn't. The truth was, I did. And every day that passed brought us one step closer to the moment when everyone in that house would finally discover what Daniel had protected all those years. By the following Friday, the atmosphere inside my house had changed. No one said it out loud, but everyone was waiting for something. Lauren checked her phone constantly. Ethan seemed distracted. Even Noah noticed. "Why is Mom cleaning the upstairs again?" he asked over breakfast. I smiled. "Maybe she wants everything to look nice." He shrugged. "I guess." I already knew the truth. Today was the day. The locksmith was coming. William had told me not to interfere. "Let them reveal themselves," he'd said. So I did exactly that. I stayed quiet. Around 10 o'clock, a white service van pulled into the driveway. A man in a navy shirt stepped out carrying a toolbox. Lauren practically hurried outside to greet him. "Thanks for coming so quickly." "My pleasure." She led him upstairs without even looking in my direction. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. From where I sat, I could hear footsteps above me. Metal tools clinked together. A drill started for a few seconds, then silence. Ethan walked into the kitchen. He looked uncomfortable. "Mom?" "Yes." "The locksmith is just opening the closet." "I know. It'll only take a minute." I looked at him calmly. "I know." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "I hope you're not upset." I almost smiled. Hope. That was an interesting word. Because he hadn't hoped I would keep my bedroom. He hadn't hoped I would stay upstairs. But now he hoped I wouldn't be upset. "It's your decision," I replied quietly. He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You allowed it." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Before he could answer, Lauren called from upstairs. "Ethan, I'm coming." He hurried away. A few seconds later, I heard it. Click. The lock had finally opened. The sound echoed through the house. For 18 years, only Daniel and I had held that key. Now strangers stood inside the most private room in our home. I slowly closed my eyes. "Please let your plan work," I whispered. More footsteps, boxes being moved, cabinet doors opening, voices. Lauren sounded excited. "Oh my goodness, Another contractor laughed. Looks like a time capsule. Curiosity finally pulled me upstairs, not because I wanted to stop them, because I wanted to see their faces. I reached the bedroom doorway. Lauren hadn't noticed me yet. She was kneeling beside one of Daniel's storage boxes. Family photographs covered the floor. Military medals rested on the bed. Old journals had been stacked into neat piles. One contractor carefully held a framed Navy photograph. "Your father served?" he asked Ethan. Ethan nodded. "Yeah." "I never knew." The man smiled respectfully. "He should be proud." Ethan looked at the picture for several seconds. His expression softened. "I forgot about this photo." Forgot. That single word broke my heart. Some memories disappear slowly, not because they're unimportant, because people stop looking at them. Lauren wasn't interested in photographs. She was searching through folders, opening envelopes, reading labels, one after another. Then she picked up the thick property binder. There it is. Her voice was filled with excitement. Ethan walked over immediately. "What? The paperwork." She placed the binder on the bed. "This has to be everything." I quietly stepped inside. The contractor noticed me first. "Oh." He looked uncomfortable. "Sorry about the mess." "It's all right." Lauren barely glanced at me. She was already flipping through legal documents, insurance, tax records, receipts, home maintenance files. Daniel had organized everything perfectly. Lauren smiled triumphantly. "I knew he'd keep records." Ethan sat beside her. "What does it say?" "I don't know yet." She kept turning pages faster and faster. Every few seconds, she frowned. "This isn't it." "What?" "The deed." She searched another folder. Nothing. Another. Still nothing. Her movements became frantic. She opened every divider inside the binder. Then she stopped. "That's strange." Ethan looked confused. "What? Something's missing." My heartbeat remained perfectly steady. I already knew what she couldn't find. The envelope. The one I had removed days earlier. Lauren searched again. She checked every folder twice, then a third time. "It should be here." Ethan looked around the room. "Maybe it's somewhere else." Together they opened every storage box. Family letters, Christmas cards, Daniel's journals, military certificates, old insurance policies. Everything appeared exactly as Daniel had left it. Except the single envelope that mattered most. Lauren stood up abruptly. "No." She looked directly at me. "You've been in here?" "Yes." "You took something." Her accusation hung in the air. I answered honestly. "I cleaned." "What did you remove?" "Personal items." "What personal items? I don't owe you an inventory." Her expression hardened. "Ethan." She turned toward him. "Tell her." He looked trapped. "Mom." "What? If there's paperwork?" "What paperwork?" "The important paperwork." I folded my hands calmly. "Important to whom?" He sighed. "You know what I mean." "I really don't." Lauren interrupted. "The ownership documents." There it was, finally. Not memories, not Daniel's medals, not family history, ownership, money. That had always been the destination. I looked around the room. Boxes filled with our family's entire history surrounded us. Letters written over 40 years, baby keepsakes, wedding photographs, military honors. A lifetime. Yet the only thing Lauren cared about was paperwork connected to the house. In that moment, I felt sorry for her, because she couldn't see the greatest treasures, even while standing in the middle of them. The contractor quietly cleared his throat. I think we're finished here. He sensed the tension immediately. Lauren barely acknowledged him. She kept staring at me. You hid something. I met her eyes. What makes you think that? Because this file isn't complete. I shrugged. Maybe Daniel filed it somewhere else. No. Her voice became sharper. He wouldn't. I almost smiled. For someone who barely knew my husband? She sounded remarkably certain. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Lauren? No. She pointed toward me. She knows. Silence filled the room. Even Noah, who had quietly walked upstairs without anyone noticing, stood frozen in the hallway. He looked from his parents to me. What's happening? Nobody answered him. Instead, Lauren spoke again. Kimberly. She no longer called me by my first name with warmth. Now it sounded like an interrogation. If you've hidden legal documents, I interrupted her. I've hidden nothing that belongs to you. The room fell completely silent. Even Ethan looked stunned. For the first time in weeks, I hadn't backed down. Lauren opened her mouth, then closed it. She hadn't expected resistance. Not from me, not after months of quiet obedience. She looked at Ethan. We need to talk. They walked into the hallway together. I remained inside the bedroom. The contractors quietly packed their tools. As they left, one of them paused beside me. He glanced at Daniel's military medals, then at the old family photographs. You've got a beautiful history here, ma'am. I smiled softly. Yes. I hope nobody throws it away. So do I. After they left, I looked around the room. Daniel's closet stood open. Its secrets were no longer hidden. Almost everything inside had now been seen. Almost. The one thing Daniel truly wanted protected was already somewhere safe. And downstairs, I could hear Lauren and Ethan arguing for the very first time about something they could no longer control. The argument downstairs lasted nearly an hour. I never walked into the living room. I didn't have to. Their voices carried through the house. Lauren sounded angry. Ethan sounded confused. Neither of them sounded confident anymore. Every few minutes, I heard the same sentence. It has to be somewhere. Around dinner time, Ethan finally came into the garage. He looked exhausted. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. He closed the garage door behind him. Mom. I looked up from the novel resting in my lap. Yes. He stood there for several seconds before speaking again. We need to talk. I figured. He pulled over the folding chair and sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he took a deep breath. Did you remove paperwork from Dad's closet? I answered honestly. I removed something. His shoulders stiffened. So, Lauren was right. I never said that. Then what did you remove? A letter your father left for me. His expression softened. A letter and one sealed document. What kind of document? I don't know. That wasn't entirely true. I knew it was important. I simply wasn't ready to tell him why. Ethan leaned forward. Mom, if it has anything to do with the house, I interrupted quietly. Why are you suddenly interested in the house? He hesitated. I just want to understand everything. No? I shook my head. You want ownership. He looked hurt. That's not fair. Isn't it? He rubbed both hands across his face. We're trying to plan for the future. I looked directly into his eyes. Using my home? His voice grew louder. I never said we were taking it. You moved me into the garage. Silence. You turned my bedroom into a renovation project. Silence again. You hired contractors without asking me. He lowered his head. I know how it looks. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the sentence was unbelievable. It doesn't look like anything, Ethan. It happened. He didn't answer. Instead, he quietly asked, Can I at least read Dad's letter? No. Why? Because he addressed it to me. He stood abruptly. So you're hiding things. I'm protecting them. From me. I honestly don't know anymore. That answer hurt him. I could see it. His jaw tightened. You don't trust me. I slowly stood as well. I trusted you with my home. Neither of us spoke after that. Then Lauren appeared in the doorway. She hadn't even bothered to knock. Are we done pretending? I turned toward her. Pretending? She crossed her arms. You've hidden legal documents? I've protected my husband's belongings. They affect us. They affect me. She took another step forward. No, Kimberly. She pointed toward the ceiling. That house affects all of us. I remained calm. It has for years. Exactly. Her voice became sharper. We've invested time. We've invested money. We've made improvements. I almost smiled. You painted walls. She ignored my comment. If there are documents that determine ownership, I interrupted. Ownership determined your interest. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at Ethan. Tell her. He stayed silent. That silence said more than any speech ever could. Lauren sighed dramatically. Fine. She looked directly at me. If you're hiding paperwork, we'll have to involve a lawyer. I nodded. I already have. Both of them froze. Lauren blinked. What? I've already spoken with an attorney. When? A few days ago? Ethan looked stunned. You hired a lawyer. I spoke with one. Who? William Carter. The color drained from Ethan's face. Dad's attorney. Yes. Lauren recovered first. Good. She smiled confidently. Then let's all meet together. I already did. No. I mean all of us. I looked at her for several seconds. I think that's possible. She smiled. Perfect. I reached into my sweater pocket, removed a business card, and placed it on the small table beside my chair. His office number. Lauren immediately picked it up. I'll call tomorrow. You won't need to. She frowned. Why? Because he already knows. The confidence slowly disappeared from her face. What does that mean? It means... A familiar voice interrupted from the driveway. It means I was invited. The garage door slowly opened. William Carter walked inside carrying a leather briefcase. Lauren stared at him. Ethan looked completely confused. I wasn't surprised. I'd spoken with William that morning. After hearing the locksmith had opened the closet, he suggested we stop waiting. Sometimes, he told me over the phone, the truth needs witnesses. He extended his hand politely. Good evening. Nobody moved. Lauren finally spoke. You came here? Mrs. Taylor asked me to. She looked at me. You planned this. I answered softly. I prepared. William placed his briefcase on the folding table. I understand there are questions regarding the Taylor residence. Lauren immediately stepped forward. Yes. She pointed toward me. She's withholding legal documents. William nodded calmly. I know. Lauren smiled. Good. I'll need to review everything. He looked at her kindly. I already have. Her smile disappeared. What? I reviewed the trust document several days ago. The trust? She glanced at Ethan. What trust? William looked from one face to the other. Daniel Taylor established the Taylor Family Trust years before his death. Neither Ethan nor Lauren spoke. William slowly removed several certified documents from his briefcase. Every page carried official seals, original signatures, notarizations. He laid them neatly across the table. The original documents remained safely secured. He tapped the copies. These are certified duplicates. Lauren quickly reached toward them. William calmly placed his hand over the papers. I'm not finished. She pulled her hand back. You both appear to believe this house automatically belongs to Ethan. He paused. It does not. The garage became completely silent. Even Noah, who had quietly stepped into the doorway behind his father, stopped moving. Ethan stared at William. I don't understand. I know. William folded his hands. That's why I'm here. He looked directly at me first, then back at Ethan. The next few minutes are going to change everything you believe about this house. I looked at Daniel's letter resting safely inside my handbag. For the first time since all of this had begun, I knew the truth was no longer hidden. And once William started explaining, nothing in our family would ever be the same again. No one moved. The garage suddenly felt much smaller. William Carter stood beside the folding table, his leather briefcase still open. The certified documents lay neatly in front of him. Lauren was the first to speak. I think there's been a misunderstanding. William looked at her calmly. I don't believe there has. She folded her arms. Ethan is Daniel's only child. Correct. So naturally the house belongs to him. William gently shook his head. That assumption is exactly why Mr. Taylor created the trust. I watched Ethan's face. He looked completely lost. Mr. Carter? His voice sounded almost like the little boy I used to know. I honestly thought Dad left everything to Mom first, then to me. William nodded. Many people assume that. So, that's not what happened. No? William picked up the first document. This property has been owned by the Taylor Family Trust since 2008. He pointed toward the date. Your father transferred ownership while he was still alive. Lauren frowned. Why would anyone do that? William answered without hesitation. To protect his family. She laughed nervously. From what? He looked directly at her. Exactly this. Silence. William continued. The trust gives Kimberly Taylor the exclusive right to live in this home for the remainder of her life. He paused to let the words settle. No person may force her to leave. No person may reduce her living space. No person may remove her personal property. No person may interfere with her peaceful enjoyment of the residence. Each sentence landed harder than the one before it. I looked at Ethan. His face had turned pale. Lauren spoke quickly. But we weren't forcing her out. William looked toward the garage around us. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. My bed, my dresser, my nightstand, everything was visible. The truth surrounded us. Lauren tried again. She agreed. I finally spoke. When she opened her mouth, nothing came out because she couldn't name a single moment. William quietly turned another page. Mr. Taylor anticipated that someone might someday pressure Kimberly into giving up parts of the home. Lauren interrupted. Pressure is subjective. William smiled politely. The trust defines it. He adjusted his glasses. Pressure shall include relocation from established living quarters, removal of personal belongings without consent, coercion regarding ownership, or any attempt to assume control over the residence during Kimberly Taylor's lifetime. Every word echoed inside the garage. Ethan slowly sat down on an old storage box. He looked stunned. I didn't know. William nodded. I believe you. Lauren immediately turned toward Ethan. You said the house was yours? Ethan stared at her. I thought it was. She shook her head. You told me your dad wanted you to have it. He did. William answered before Lauren could continue. He wanted Ethan to receive benefits under the trust. Lauren looked relieved. There. She pointed toward William. So, eventually? William raised one finger. I wasn't finished. Her smile disappeared again. He opened another folder. This section contains additional conditions. Conditions. That word again. The same word I'd seen inside Daniel's binder. William read slowly. Any beneficiary who intentionally attempts to remove, displace, manipulate, intimidate, or otherwise deprive Kimberly Taylor of her rights under this trust shall immediately forfeit all future beneficial interest. The garage became absolutely silent. Even Noah stopped breathing for a moment. Lauren frowned. What does that mean? William answered simply. It means exactly what it says. She looked confused. I don't understand. Ethan was a future beneficiary. Yes. If he violated this clause? William gently closed the folder. His future inheritance ended immediately. Lauren stared at him. No. I'm afraid so. No. She shook her head repeatedly. That can't happen. It already has. She looked toward Ethan. Say something. He couldn't. He simply stared at the floor. William continued calmly. The trust required only one thing. He looked directly at Ethan. Respect your mother's rights. Tears slowly filled Ethan's eyes. I never wanted to hurt her. I believe you. William's voice softened. But intentions don't erase actions. I had imagined this moment many times. I thought I would feel victorious. I didn't. Watching my son's face collapse wasn't satisfying. It was heartbreaking. Lauren suddenly became angry. This is ridiculous. She pointed toward me. She planned this. I quietly answered. No. She hid documents. I protected what my husband asked me to protect. You trapped us. William interrupted firmly. No one trapped you. He opened another folder. Daniel anticipated possibilities. He didn't create them. Lauren took a step backward. This isn't fair. William looked at her. Fair. He glanced toward my bed in the garage. Was that fair? She remained silent. He pointed toward the staircase. Moving the homeowner into a garage. Silence. Planning renovations without permission. Silence. Discussing selling property you did not own. Silence again. Lauren slowly lowered her eyes. William's voice became gentler. The trust wasn't designed to punish. It was designed to protect. Those words hit me harder than anyone else. Daniel hadn't spent his final months trying to control the future. He'd simply been protecting me. Even after death. Noah quietly walked toward me. He slipped his small hand into mine. Grandma? Yes, sweetheart. Are you in trouble? My heart broke. I knelt beside him. No. Is Dad... I looked toward Ethan. He still hadn't spoken. Noah? I smiled softly. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. He nodded. Can mistakes be fixed? I couldn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked at William. He understood my question without words. He slowly nodded. Then he turned toward Ethan. The trust removed your financial interest. He paused. It did not forbid reconciliation. Ethan finally looked up. His face was wet with tears. So, his voice cracked. I lost everything. William answered carefully. You lost an inheritance. Then he looked directly at him. Whether you lose your mother? He glanced toward me. Depends entirely on what you do next. No one spoke after that, because everyone understood. The conversation was no longer about property. It had become something much bigger. Daniel's trust had protected the house. Now, only Ethan's choices could determine whether it also protected our family. After William left, no one knew what to say. The garage that had become my bedroom suddenly felt like a courtroom after the verdict. Lauren was the first to break the silence. She grabbed her purse from the kitchen counter. This is unbelievable. She looked directly at Ethan. You never told me any of this? He stared at the floor. I didn't know. You should have known. I thought I did. She threw her hands into the air. You based our entire future on assumptions. He finally looked at her. We both did. That wasn't the answer she wanted. She shook her head. No. This happened because your father hid everything. I quietly corrected her. He protected everything. She ignored me. Instead, she pointed toward Ethan. You said we'd eventually own this house. I believed we would. You promised. I never promised. You absolutely did. The argument grew louder. Noah quietly walked over and stood beside me. He wrapped both arms around my waist. I gently rested my hand on his shoulder. He whispered, Are they mad? I nodded softly. A little. Did I do something wrong? My heart broke. No. None of this is your fault. He buried his face against my sweater. Children always believe family problems somehow belong to them. I wanted to shield him from every word. Instead, he heard everything. Lauren stormed upstairs. A few seconds later, drawers slammed shut. Closet doors banged. Suitcases rolled across the hallway floor. Ethan looked confused. What are you doing? She shouted from upstairs. I'm leaving. He hurried after her. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. Their voices echoed through the ceiling. I remained downstairs with Noah. He looked toward the stairs. Are Mom and Dad getting divorced? I swallowed hard. I don't know. I don't want them to. Neither did I. Even after everything, I still wanted this family to survive, just not at the cost of someone's dignity. An hour later, Lauren came downstairs carrying 2 large suitcases. She didn't look at me. She walked straight toward the front door. Ethan followed. Lauren. She kept walking. Lauren, stop. She finally turned around. I trusted you. So did I. No. She shook her head. I trusted your plan. My plan? Your inheritance. The word hung in the air. Inheritance. Not marriage, not family, not love. Inheritance. For the first time, I think Ethan truly heard her. He stared at her. Is that what this was about? She looked away. No. Then what? We needed security. We had each other. She laughed bitterly. That doesn't pay bills. Those 6 words changed something inside Ethan. I watched it happen, almost physically. He looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. She noticed it too. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like this is all my fault. He answered quietly. It isn't. She pointed toward me. She's turning you against me? I hadn't spoken in nearly 10 minutes, yet somehow, everything had become my fault. Ethan slowly shook his head. No. He looked exhausted. I'm finally seeing what was already there. Lauren's expression hardened. Fine. She picked up her suitcase. You can stay. I'm leaving. She walked out the front door. The house became silent. The sound of her car driving away echoed down the street. Ethan remained standing in the living room, motionless. Noah looked up at his father. "Dad?" Ethan turned toward him, his eyes immediately filled with tears. He walked over and hugged his son tightly. "I'm sorry." Noah hugged him back. "Why are you crying?" Ethan couldn't answer. That night, Noah slept beside me in the garage. He asked if we could watch an old superhero movie together. I said yes. Halfway through the film, he fell asleep with his head resting on my shoulder. I covered him with my blanket. Then I sat awake long after midnight. Around 1 o'clock, I heard footsteps. Ethan quietly entered the garage. He looked terrible. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was messy. He had clearly been crying. "Mom!" I nodded toward the folding chair. He sat down slowly. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "I found something." "What?" "My credit report," I frowned. "And—" He looked ashamed. I didn't recognize half the accounts. I stayed silent. He continued, "There are credit cards, personal loans, store financing. I didn't know about most of them." My heart sank. "Lauren handled the finances." He nodded. "I trusted her." "How much?" He looked away. "I don't even know." The next sentence barely came out. "I think we're over $100,000 in debt." I closed my eyes. Everything suddenly made sense. The expensive furniture, the vacations, the constant shopping, the obsession with selling the house. They hadn't wanted luxury. They needed rescue. Ethan rubbed his face. I kept wondering why she was always so desperate. He laughed bitterly. "Now I know." I looked at him carefully. "Did she hide this from you?" He nodded. "I only discovered it because the attorney mentioned financial disclosures." He held up several printed statements. Most of them were opened in the last 4 years. My heart ached, not because of Lauren, because Ethan had trusted blindly. Sometimes love isn't dangerous because people lie. It's dangerous because we stop asking questions. Ethan looked completely defeated. "I failed you." I remained quiet. "I failed Noah." Another silence. "And I failed Dad." That sentence hurt him most. I could hear it. He spent his entire life protecting this family. I almost destroyed it. For the first time in months, I didn't see the man who moved my bed into the garage. I saw my little boy, the same little boy who cried after scraping his knees on the sidewalk. The same boy who once apologized after accidentally breaking my favorite vase. Except this time, the broken thing wasn't a vase. It was trust. And trust is much harder to repair. Before leaving, Ethan stopped beside the garage door. "Mom?" "Yes?" "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me." I answered honestly. "I don't know either." He nodded slowly. "I'll spend the rest of my life earning the chance." Then he quietly walked back inside. For the first time since this nightmare began, I believed those words weren't spoken out of guilt. They came from regret. Real regret. And sometimes, regret is where healing finally begins. The house became strangely quiet after Lauren left. Not peaceful, just empty. It was amazing how one person's absence could remove so much noise. For the first time in months, I could hear birds outside my kitchen window. I could hear Noah laughing while building a blanket fort in the living room. I could even hear the old grandfather clock Daniel had repaired years ago. Tick, tick, tick. It felt as though the house itself was taking a deep breath. Ethan barely spoke during the next few days. He went to work, came home, made dinner for Noah, then sat alone at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. I watched him from a distance. Not because I didn't care, because healing cannot be forced. Some lessons require silence. 3 mornings later, I woke to the sound of furniture moving. At first, I panicked. Then I remembered. No one was trying to move me anymore. I stepped out of the garage. Ethan was carrying my old rocking chair back into the house. He nearly dropped it when he saw me. "Sorry." "What are you doing?" He looked embarrassed. "I'm putting everything back." I looked around. Daniel's recliner sat in the hallway. Family photographs leaned against the wall. Boxes from storage filled the living room. "I should have never touched any of it." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. Instead, I quietly watched him continue. He spent the entire day carrying furniture, dusting picture frames, hanging family photographs exactly where they'd once been. Several times he asked, "Does this look right?" Sometimes I nodded. Sometimes I moved the picture half an inch. Neither of us talked much. Words weren't important. Actions were. That evening, Noah walked into the living room and smiled. "Grandpa's picture is back." I looked at Ethan. He smiled sadly. "It belongs there." Noah nodded. "I missed it." Children notice more than we think. The next weekend, Ethan asked if we could have breakfast together. Just the two of us. I agreed. We sat on the back porch drinking coffee. The same porch where Daniel and I had watched hundreds of sunrises together. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "I remember this porch." "So do I." "You used to wake me up on Saturdays. You hated getting out of bed." He laughed quietly. "I really did." "You always complained, but I still came." "You did." Another silence. Then he looked toward the backyard. "Mom?" "Yes." "I've been remembering things." "What kind of things?" He smiled sadly. "The things I forgot." He looked down at his coffee cup. "I remembered the winter our furnace broke." I looked at him. "I never told you about that." "I know." "I found the repair receipt." He swallowed hard. "It was the same week Grandma's wedding ring disappeared." I closed my eyes. "I didn't want you to know." "I know." He looked at me. "You sold it." I nodded once. "For me." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Tears slowly rolled down his face. "I thought we were poor because life was unfair." He laughed bitterly. "I never realized we were poor because you refused to let me feel it." I reached across the table and gently placed my hand over his. "You were a child. And you protected me. That's what mothers do." He shook his head. "I should have protected you." Neither of us spoke for several minutes. The breeze carried the smell of freshly cut grass through the yard. Finally, Ethan whispered, "When did I become that man?" I answered honestly, "I don't think it happened all at once." He nodded slowly. "I kept blaming stress. Then work. Then bills. Then Lauren." He looked at me. "But every decision," he placed his hand against his chest, "was still mine." There it was. Responsibility. Real responsibility. Not excuses, not blame, just truth. He continued quietly. "When I carried your bed into the garage," his voice almost disappeared, "I told myself it was temporary." He looked away. "I actually believed that made it okay." "It didn't." "I know." He wiped his eyes. "I've replayed that moment every night. I see your face. I hear myself saying, Don't make this harder. He buried his face in his hands. What kind of son says that? I squeezed his hand gently. A son who forgot who he was. He looked at me again. I don't want to be him anymore. I believed him. Not because of his words, because of everything I'd watched him do since Lauren left. He never asked about the inheritance again. He never mentioned the trust. He never asked to see another document. Instead, he spent his evenings helping Noah with homework. He cooked dinner. He cleaned the kitchen. He quietly repaired the broken fence Daniel had planned to fix before his illness. Little things, honest things. The kind of things no one notices on social media, but the kind that rebuild trust. A few days later, he knocked on the garage door again. This time, he carried something in both hands. My old bedroom key. I found it. I looked at the brass key resting in his palm. You kept it. No. He smiled sadly. I found it in one of Lauren's desk drawers. I took the key carefully. I think... He paused. It belongs to you. I smiled. It always did. He nodded. I know. Then he surprised me. He reached into his pocket and removed another object, Daniel's handwritten note, the one from the toolbox. You remember this? My heart skipped. Where did you find it? I kept it all these years. He unfolded the faded paper. You've always found a way. He smiled through tears. I think Dad wrote that for both of us. I looked toward the house. Maybe he had. Before going inside, Ethan stopped beside me. I know forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't. I also know I may never deserve another chance. I looked directly into his eyes. None of us deserve forgiveness. We receive it. His eyes filled again. I hope someday. He struggled to finish. You'll be proud to call me your son again. I stepped forward, wrapped my arms around him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, my little boy hugged me back. Not because he wanted something, not because he expected anything, simply because he finally remembered where home really was. Summer slowly gave way to autumn. For the first time in over a year, my home felt like mine again. Not because the trust protected it, because peace had finally returned. Lauren never came back to live in the house. A week after she left, she called Ethan. They talked for almost 2 hours behind closed doors. When he came out, he looked exhausted. It's over, he quietly told me. Neither of us needed to ask what he meant. Their marriage had reached the end long before she packed those suitcases. The legal paperwork only confirmed what their hearts already knew. A month later, Ethan rented a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing fancy. An older brick building near Noah's school. He insisted on paying every dollar himself. No shortcuts this time, he told me. I need to build my own life. I simply nodded. I think your father would be proud of that. Before moving out, he stood in the garage looking at my bed. I still can't believe I did this. I smiled gently. I can. He looked surprised. You lost your way. He lowered his head. But you found it again. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I almost didn't. You did. That's what matters. The day Ethan moved into his apartment, the garage finally became a garage again. He insisted on carrying every piece of furniture upstairs himself. No movers. No friends. This is my responsibility. I watched him slowly carry my bed back through the front door, step by step. The exact reverse of the day he had taken it away. When he finally placed it back inside my bedroom, He stood quietly for several seconds. "I'm sorry." He had said those words many times already. This time, they felt different. Not because they were louder, because they were complete. No excuses, no explanations, just truth. I smiled. "Help me make the bed." He laughed softly. "Deal." For nearly an hour, we worked together. Fresh sheets, new pillows, the old quilt Daniel loved. Everything returned exactly where it belonged. When we finished, Ethan stepped backward and smiled. "It finally looks like home again." I looked around the room. "It does." Then my eyes drifted toward Daniel's closet. The door stood closed. The brass key rested in my hand. Noah suddenly appeared in the hallway. "Grandma?" "Yes." "Can I help too?" I smiled. "I was hoping you'd ask." I unlocked the closet, slowly, carefully. The familiar cedar scent filled the room once again. This time, I wasn't alone. Noah stepped inside with wide eyes. "Wow!" He looked around the shelves. "So, this is Grandpa's room?" In a way. He picked up one of Daniel's Navy medals. "Was he a hero?" I smiled. He never called himself one. "What do you call him?" "My best friend." Noah gently placed the medal back exactly where he found it. For the next several hours, we opened boxes together. Not because we needed to search for anything, because it was finally time to share our family's story. I showed him Daniel's Navy photographs. He laughed at the old hairstyles. I showed him our wedding album. He pointed at every picture. "You were pretty." I laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is." We opened another box. Inside rested Ethan's first baseball glove. Noah immediately recognized it. "Dad still has the same throw." "He does. He taught me." I smiled. "And your grandfather taught him." One generation after another. That was the real inheritance. Not money, not property, not legal documents, stories, values, love. As the afternoon continued, Noah found Daniel's journals. "Can I read these someday? When you're old enough to understand them?" He nodded seriously. "I'll wait." That simple answer made me smile. Children know how to wait when something truly matters. Adults often forget. Later that evening, Ethan stopped by after unpacking his apartment. He found Noah sitting on the bedroom floor surrounded by old photographs. "What are you two doing?" Noah grinned. "Grandpa had a cool mustache." Ethan laughed for the first time in weeks. He really did. Noah held up another photograph. "Is this you?" Ethan looked at the picture. A little boy, missing 2 front teeth, holding a fishing pole almost taller than himself. He smiled. "I remember that day." I looked at him. "So do I." He sat beside Noah. For nearly an hour we shared stories. Some funny, some embarrassing, some heartbreaking. Daniel somehow filled the room without ever speaking. When Noah finally went downstairs for dinner, Ethan remained sitting beside the closet. He quietly ran his hand across one of Daniel's journals. "I spent years thinking this closet hid money." He laughed softly. "I was wrong." "What do you think it held?" He looked around. "The family." I nodded. "Exactly." He smiled sadly. "Dad knew." "Knew what?" "That one day I'd need to remember who I came from." He looked toward me. "I almost forgot." "You did. But now?" He gently closed one of the journals. "I don't ever want to forget again." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I remained in my bedroom alone. The closet door stood open. For the first time in 18 years, I didn't feel the need to lock it. There were no more secrets inside. Daniel's documents had served their purpose. The trust had protected me. the truth had protected our family. And the memories? Those belong to all of us now. I gently turned off the bedroom light. As I looked around the room one last time before bed, I realized something. The greatest treasure Daniel left behind had never been hidden in envelopes. It had never been written into legal documents. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the trust. It wasn't even the inheritance. It was the wisdom to understand that families survive only when love is stronger than greed. And thanks to one old closet, our family had finally remembered that lesson before it was too late. Almost a year has passed since the day I came home and found my bed sitting in the garage. Sometimes I still think about that afternoon, not with anger anymore, with gratitude. Because if that painful day had never happened, none of us would have been forced to face the truth. Life has a strange way of using heartbreak to uncover what comfort keeps hidden. The seasons changed. The maple tree in my front yard turned brilliant shades of red and gold. Then winter arrived. For the first time in many years, I looked forward to Christmas. Not because everything was perfect, because everything was honest. Ethan kept his promise. He never asked about the trust again. Never once. Instead, every Saturday morning, he came over with Noah. Sometimes they mowed my lawn. Sometimes they cleaned the gutters. Sometimes they simply sat on the porch drinking coffee with me. Those ordinary moments became the greatest gift I could have asked for. One snowy afternoon, Ethan knocked on my front door carrying 2 grocery bags. "I brought chili," I smiled. "You finally learned how to cook." He laughed. "No. I called Margaret for help." I invited him inside. Noah ran straight upstairs. "Can I look in Grandpa's closet?" I smiled. "You don't have to ask anymore." That sentence made me stop for a moment. You don't have to ask anymore. The closet wasn't locked. It hadn't been for months. The secret was gone. Only memories remained. I walked upstairs a few minutes later. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor reading one of Daniel's old journals. Not the serious ones. The funny one. Daniel had written down family stories over the years. I watched Noah laugh. "What happened?" He looked up. "Grandpa accidentally burned Thanksgiving turkey." I laughed. He certainly did. "What did everyone eat?" "Your grandpa ordered pizza." Noah laughed even harder. "He sounds funny." He was. Ethan quietly appeared beside me. "I forgot about that." So did I. For several minutes, the 3 of us sat on the bedroom floor sharing stories. No phones, no television, no distractions. Just family. I realized something then. The room felt fuller than it had in years. Not because it held furniture, because it held connection. Later that evening, Ethan stayed behind after Noah went outside to build a snowman. He looked at me thoughtfully. "Mom." "Yes." "I've been thinking about Dad." "I think about him every day." He nodded. "I used to believe he left me a house." He smiled sadly. "Now I know he left me something much harder." What was that? A second chance. My eyes filled with tears. "I almost wasted it." "But you didn't." "I almost did." He looked around the bedroom. If Dad hadn't created that trust, he stopped. I would have become someone he never wanted me to be. I gently touched his arm. He didn't write those rules because he expected you to fail. He wrote them because he believed you could become better. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand that now. Christmas arrived a week later. The whole house smelled like cinnamon and fresh cookies. Margaret joined us for dinner. William Carter stopped by for dessert. Even he smiled when he saw everyone gathered around the table. I've waited years to see this family laugh again. So have I answered. After dinner, Noah handed everyone a homemade Christmas ornament. Mine was shaped like a little house. Across the front he had written, "Our home." I hugged him tightly. "I love it." He pointed toward the tree. "There's another one." I looked carefully. Near the very top hung a tiny wooden closet. It had a little gold door. I laughed. "You made Grandpa's closet." He nodded proudly. "Because that's where our family came back together." The room became completely silent, out of the mouths of children. Sometimes they understand life better than adults. That little ornament still hangs on my tree today. Not because it reminds me of pain, because it reminds me of healing. Months later, William called to tell me something. The trust has officially completed its review. I smiled. "Thank you." "There is one final note," Daniel left. "There is..." He asked me to read it, only if your family found its way back. Tears immediately filled my eyes. William slowly read Daniel's words over the phone. "If you're hearing this, then forgiveness proved stronger than fear. The house was never meant to keep our family together. Love was. The trust could protect walls. Only you could protect each other." I cried harder than I had in years, even after his death. Daniel somehow knew exactly what we would need to hear. Today, my bedroom is exactly where it has always been. Upstairs. The garage once again holds bicycles, gardening tools, and old paint cans. Not my bed. The family photographs are back on every wall. Daniel's navy portrait hangs proudly in the hallway. His recliner sits beside the fireplace. And every Sunday afternoon, Ethan and Noah come over for dinner. Sometimes we eat roast chicken. Sometimes we order pizza, just like Daniel once did after burning Thanksgiving dinner. We laugh about it every single time. People often ask me if I regret forgiving my son. My answer is always the same. Forgiveness didn't excuse what happened. It honored the person he chose to become afterward. Trust wasn't rebuilt with promises. It was rebuilt with ordinary days, honest work, quiet respect, consistent love, and perhaps that's the greatest lesson my husband left behind. A house can be inherited. Money can disappear. Documents can protect property. But character must be chosen every single day. And if one old locked closet taught our family anything, it's that the greatest inheritance you'll ever leave behind isn't what people receive after you're gone. It's who they become because you lived. Looking back, I never imagined that the most painful day of my life would become the beginning of my family's healing. When Ethan moved my bed into the garage, I thought I had lost my home. What I eventually discovered was that a home is much more than walls, furniture, or legal documents. A home is built on respect. Without respect, even the most beautiful house becomes an empty building. For a long time, I believed that loving my family meant saying yes to everything. I confused sacrifice with silence. But there comes a moment when protecting the people you love also means protecting yourself. Healthy boundaries are not acts of selfishness, they are acts of wisdom. If we allow others to cross every line without consequence, we don't strengthen relationships. We quietly teach people that our dignity has no value. Daniel understood something I didn't fully appreciate until much later. He knew that money could never hold a family together. Property could be inherited. Savings could disappear. Even a beautiful house could be sold. But integrity, kindness, accountability, and compassion are treasures that must be passed from one generation to the next. Those are the things that truly last. I also learned that forgiveness isn't pretending the pain never happened. Forgiveness begins only after truth is acknowledged and responsibility is accepted. Ethan couldn't change the past. Neither could I. But he chose to change himself day after day through his actions instead of empty promises. That gave our family the chance to rebuild something even stronger than before. Trust, earned the hard way. If you're going through something difficult with your own family today, I hope this story reminds you that it's never too late to choose honesty over pride, humility over entitlement, and love over greed. Sometimes the hardest conversations become the doorway to the deepest healing. If this story touched your heart, I'd truly love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you loved? Or have you ever been given a second chance that changed your life? Please share your experience in the comments. I read every one of them. And before you go, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel and connecting with people from different places. If you enjoyed this journey with me, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join me again for another story about family resilience, forgiveness, and hope. Thank you for spending your time with me today.